Vox, how we feeling? It's first week of summer. How's your summer going? So good. Some of you, I feel like you're more exhausted right now than you are in the school year. What happened? What happened? You had a little bit of freedom. Hey, if you can't tell, no, I've not been smoking. I lost my voice. And so I am like, I'm probably going to be popping a couple cough drops during this message to try to get through. I've literally just been praying, like, Lord, just let me preach this one. You can take the rest of my voice tomorrow. Just let me preach this to Vox. I just want to preach this to y'all. We start a new series tonight called The Darkest Timeline. Say Darkest Timeline. The Darkest Timeline. And we're going to spend this summer on a book of the Bible. I don't know that we've taught in Vox in a long time. It's a book of the Bible called Job, or if you are unfamiliar with the Bible, you probably picked that up and said the book of Job. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you went to the book of Job looking for a job, you will be sorely disappointed because it has nothing to do with finding a job. In fact, the book of Job is about a guy named Job who kind of loses his job. So it's really everything against a job. But the book of Job, I think, answers some questions that are pressing on us. Answers some questions that we ask in the heavy moments. Now, here's the deal. Sometimes we're living in the good moments. And some of you, if you're living in the good moments of summer, like we just kicked off summer. So if you're still in like man, I don't have homework. I just get to hang out with my friends. I go out to fast food every day. We just kick it. Like I go fishing. Whatever it is that you're doing, you're like, man, this is good. Life is good. Everything is awesome. But there's those moments when something begins to crumble in your life. Something falls apart. The relationship that you thought like, oh man, we're solid. And she says, we're through. Or the friendship that you thought you had and you find out that they're talking smack about you. Or the moment that the fighting in your house just doesn't stop. Like, there's questions that we ask in the heavy moments that we're probably not asking in the light moments. When everything is going really, 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 really good. When everything is jet ski happy and roller coaster happy and brand new summer outfit happy. We might not notice, but when some of those things get taken away, we ask questions like, why does God allow something bad to happen to somebody that's good? Or we ask questions like, does God even care about me? Or we ask, where is God when I ... And those are probably not the questions that you're asking at the moment that you're going down a Sunsplash water slide like, ah! But sometime around 1:30 a.m. where you realize that none of your friends can respond to you anymore, and you're in your feels, you begin to wonder some heavier things. And what's interesting to me is that the book of Job is one of the most beautiful treasures in the Bible because it's just so honest. It's brutally honest. It's not hiding anything. It just lays it all out there. The book of Job is about a man who loses everything, and he begins to ask God why, and all of the people around him begin to ask why too. Why did he lose everything? Why did bad stuff happen? Why did God allow this? In fact, Job chapter 1, verse 1, it starts off like this. There once was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. That's a country that's not present anymore. That was probably where modern day Jordan is now. It says he was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. It goes in the next verse 3, it brags pretty hard. It says he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. Everybody go, ooh. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear, I sound prepubescent in the little voice crack there. It says he also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. Here's the deal. Job has a really good life. Everything is good. Now, here's the deal. You might not recognize like, okay, 7,000 sheep. That's great for Job. That's great for Job. But I want you to understand that at the time, the average person may have had 300 animals total at max. Job is 40 times wealthier at least than every other person around him. Can you imagine having 40 times more wealth than the people around you? That's pretty rich. That feels like a good life. He's got 10 kids. He's got 7 sons, 3 daughters. Man, his life is complete. He's living a really good life. Now, here's what's even more beautiful about this is that he didn't do it. He didn't get to any of that by cheating. He didn't get to any of that by living bad. He didn't do any of that. He did it right. Here's, in fact, what's amazing is the Bible says that Job is a man of full integrity. Do you know what integrity means? Integrity means that every part of your life is authentically true to what is right. Now, here's the deal. Integrity is not you being true to yourself when yourself is wrong. Integrity is you being true to what's right. And it says, the Bible is like, bro, Job is great. He's full of integrity. I mean, he is, not only is he loaded, not only is he happy, not only is he satisfied, but gosh darn it, he's the best guy you ever meet. Like, think of the person in your life who you're like, man, I just wish I could be more like them. Not for what they have, but for who they are. I respect their life. I respect the way they talk. I respect the way they live. I just, like, that person. Job is that guy. He's the guy who always has great advice. He's the guy that you go to when you have a problem. He's the guy that you ask questions, and he always has recommendations, and you're like, Job, man, you're so good. And even though in those moments that you're like, oh, man, it would make sense for Job to do something bad here, he doesn't. He is full of integrity. In fact, the Bible records that there are 2 scenes where God is bragging on Job. Can I just share something that's really beautiful? This isn't part of my message. But God gets excited about his people. There's a whole scene in heaven, and it happens twice, where God brags about somebody, and he's like, boy, you check out my boy Job. This is what it says, Job 1, verse 8. God says, have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth. He's blameless, a man of complete integrity. I feel like I need to clarify. Finest, it doesn't mean to this verse what it means to you. Be like, oh, dang, he's fine. It's not like that. It's like, just like he's good, all right? That needed clarity. Be like, God's not like, oh, your fit is good, bro. No, he's just like, he's a great man. You check him out. He's the finest man in all the earth. He's blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God. He stays away from evil. God brags about him again, says the same exact thing in Job 2:3. God's like, man, Job is amazing. Job is awesome. He does what's right. He does what's good. He's a good person. Can I tell you that when you pick up the book of Job, and you read the start, you read verses 1, you read to verse 8, you go, oh man, I know what's coming next. Job is living a good life, and he has all the good things, and he's perfect, like he's doing everything right. God loves him. He's a man of integrity. You know what's going to happen. My expectation is that better gives birth to better. That what goes around comes around. You know what's interesting? It's not a Christian idea, but the majority of Americans believe in karma. The idea that if I put good energy into the world, I get good energy back. If I put bad vibes into the world, I'll get bad vibes back. The majority of Americans believe this. In fact, 60 something percent, I had this written down really nice. 65% agree with karma. 80 something percent, 84% believe the idea about karma. They just don't call it karma. Here's what I would guess. I would guess the majority of people that you talk to that are around you, maybe you yourself, believe in the idea that if I put out good, I will always get good back. And if I put out bad, I will get back what I deserve. And so if I begin to read the book of Job and go, I know what's coming for Job. He's so good and life is good. Do you know what I should expect from the story of Job and the life of Job? I should expect that good gives me more good, that good vibes give me better vibes, that if I follow God, God will always make my life happy. That if I do what I'm supposed to do, I will always get back good. And some of us have this expectation that when something bad happens in your world, you begin to look back into your life and go, okay, well, it's because I messed up. It's because I did this, and God's not happy with me. God's mad at me, so I got to fix this, and then God will be happy with me, and then this will be fixed in my life. Some of you have the idea that if I just did more, then God would notice me, and He'd take care, and my life would be really good. And I wish it were that simple. But the Bible says that karma is broken. At least inside of eternity, it's broken. In fact, one of the songs that's recorded in the Bible in Psalm 73, the guy just starts out and he just says, hey, listen, I would love to say that everything goes the way I think it does, but it just doesn't. He said, I've almost stopped believing, almost lost my faith because I was jealous of people who are prideful. I saw wicked people doing well. They're not suffering, they're healthy and strong. They don't have troubles like the rest of us. They don't have problems like other people. Have you ever looked and seen somebody doing bad things, getting away with it, and then like thriving because of it? And you just look into yourself and you go, what? Why are they getting away with this? And then it feels like things are falling on you. He said they wear pride like a necklace. They put on violence as their clothing. They're looking for profits and do not control their selfish desires. People just do whatever they want and they get away with it. And there's a song in the Bible where he's like, God, I'm mad about this. Life just doesn't seem fair at this moment. Something wild happens. We don't have time to get into all the details of why this happens or how this happens, but the Bible records a scene that happens in heaven regarding Job. It says there's a spiritual being who comes into God's presence, and God is saying, Job is amazing, and the spiritual being, the Bible calls him the Satan, responds back to God and says, well, he's only good because you've made life easy for him. Job is only good, he's only integrous, he's only righteous because you've blessed him. You've made life easy. And he responds to God and he says, hey, God, I bet if you let me take away all of the good things in his life, he would curse you to your face. The Satan responds to God and he says, God, listen, they're actually more shallow than you think they are. These people don't really love you. They love the things that you give them. They don't actually care about you. They just want you to make life super easy. And if you stop making life super easy, man, they'll turn on you. If you, for a moment, allowed something bad to enter into their life, they'll turn on you. He says, watch, if I do it to Job, he'll turn on you and he'll curse you to your face. And so, there's one day in Job's life It was probably the heaviest day he ever faced. Probably the saddest, most painful day. If you had to think about what's been the hardest day of your life so far? And listen, I know some of your stories. Some of you have had absolutely horrible, horrendous evils that you've seen in a day. Some of you have lived whole seasons of your life at the reciprocity of somebody else's wickedness. And some of you will walk through heavy things. Let me tell you, Job understands this. It says there's one day that Job is home, and a guy runs into his house. There's one of his workers. Job probably had close to 500 employees, if not more. And he runs up to Job and he says, "Hey, we were plowing your oxen with the donkeys when we were raided. All the animals are stolen. They killed all of the workers. I'm the last one." Verse 16 says, while he was still speaking. That's enough sorrow for a day. That's enough sorrow for weeks. That's enough sorrow for months. If you lost hundreds of people that you know, if a majority of your work was stolen in a day, you'd spent your life on it. That same day, while he was still speaking, another messenger arrived, the fire of God, which is like a metaphor for lightning. It says, lightning has fallen from heaven. It burned up the sheep and all the shepherds. I'm the only one who escaped. While he was still speaking, a third messenger arrived. 3 bands of Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels, killed your servants. I'm the only one who escaped. While he was still speaking, another arrived with this news. Your sons and daughters were feasting. Suddenly, a powerful wind swept in from the wilderness, hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed. All your children are dead. I'm the only one. Can you imagine? This is why it's important to feel Job and not just read it. Because here's a man who is literally living one of the most terrible things. Everything in his life is broken in moments. Everything in his life is broken in these moments. And a fair question, I think, that we ask at the bottom of those things is, God, why? Why? It'd be one thing if he was a bad man, because then we could go back and say, well, it's because you deserved it. But do you know what's so interesting about the book of Job? Is that Job has something deeper. On the darkest day, in the heaviest moment, literally the bottom of life itself. Job 120, you read this earlier in this room. This is Job's actual response. It says, Job stood up, and he tore his robe in grief, and he shaved his head, and he fell to the ground to do what? To worship. He said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I'll be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. I think what's so wild about this story is that we get to see an example of a man who, even when everything was taken away from him, had a faith that endured. And the question that the rest of the book of Job starts to ask is, but why? But why did this happen? But why? Why did God allow this? What could he have done? Is there something around it? Everyone is asking. In fact, there's 20 plus chapters of just his friends arguing. This is why God let it happen to you. This is why God made it happen. This is why it happened. And do you know what happens at the end of the book of Job? Spoiler, God comes in and says, you're all wrong about why. Every single one of you is wrong about why. Can I tell you something about why bad things happen? You may not know the answer on this side of eternity. Now, the reality is there is an answer. God has an answer. There's a reason why tragedy happens. There's a reason why the Bible gives us pointers to. The Bible describes that there's an enemy of this world, Satan, who is bent on destroying, killing, and stealing from you. And he's convinced a third of every created angel to join him on that mission of ruining the life of people. That's part of the reason. Part of the reason is that you and I sin, and the people who came before us sinned, and every single sin has consequences, and those consequences cause tragedies, and you might be part of tragedies, of consequences, of sins that people have done around you. That's part of the reason. But if you want to point to why did this happen, I can't tell you that today. I can't look any of you in the eye today and say, this happened in your family because you did. Or this happened because someone in your family. Or this happened because your friend. Or this happened because the Redeemer. I can't say, I don't know why. I don't know why for every single one of you. What I do know is that God knows. And I do know that he is just. And I do know that he is good. And so much bigger than that is that God himself is willing to suffer with us. Philippians 2 describes what it was that Jesus did when he came to earth. It says he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross. I don't know if you understand something, but God has suffered every single human tragedy along with humans. There's this really beautiful song called The Road, the Rock, and the Weeds, and I'm going to be honest with you, I had every intention of singing parts of it to you tonight, and I was practicing this morning, and it sounded like the TikTok of puberty kids, so it was not going to be good. But in that song, John Mark McMillan says, talks about how God has bared the curse from the nights that he peopled with his dreams. Here's what he says. Here's what he says. Because God loved to make people, God has suffered alongside of us in every tragedy. Trauma psychologist Diane Landberg says, when we collect all of our grief together, we don't realize that God has collected it in even greater measure. She says, God suffered the most in 9/11, in the Iraq War, in the Syrian refugee crisis, in children hungry in Africa. God suffered. I don't think you understand, but almost every other conception of God in the world is of a God who doesn't care or is above all of our problems, and yet our God is the one who submits himself to sacrifice. Near the end of the song, The Road, the Rock, and the Weeds, John Mark McMillan challenges every false god, and he says, come down from your mountain, your high-rise apartment, and tell me of the God you know who bleeds. What to tell my daughter when she asks so many questions, and I fail to fill her heaviness with peace. When I've got no answers for hurt knees or cancers, but a Savior who suffers them with me. Singing Goodbye Olympus, which is a nod to fake gods. He says, the heart of my maker is spread out on the road, the rock, and the weeds. Can I tell you what's incredibly beautiful about Jesus? And what's absolutely true about the story of Job? Is that in every moment that Job felt like, God, where are you? God was there. And every question that got asked, and the questions that you and I ask, I wish I could promise you tonight, I know I've said this before, but I wish I could promise you tonight that if you did 5 things, everything in life would be easy for you. I can't lie to you. I wish I could promise that I've gone through the hardest things that I have to face in life, but I don't know that I can promise myself that. What I can promise myself, though, and what you can understand as a promise, because what God promises is that in our suffering and in our pain and in our trials, that He's present. That in the heaviest of moments, in the darkest of places, God is there with you. And you and I might not understand the why in this moment, but gosh, if we could just have a heart like Job, that even in the heavy moments, even when everything is taken away, and listen, some things might be taken away, and you might get to a moment where you go, God, why? And I need you to hear tonight that God's going, don't worry, I'm there. I'm here. That song is based on a poem. I don't normally read poetry in Vox. It just felt appropriate for tonight. It was written by a soldier during World War I. And he says this, the other gods were strong, but you were weak. They rode, but you stumbled to a throne. To our wounds, only God's wounds can speak. And not a God has wounds, but you alone.